This is the Improve and Have Fun podcast, where I'm improving myself, having fun along the way, with the hopes of encouraging you to do the same. In this episode, I wanted to talk about Steven Pressfield and a small storytelling tip. Last episode, I was talking about Anne Lamott and her book, Bird by Bird, a wonderful book, especially if you want to get into writing. And I just want to stay along these same lines of storytelling, of writing, because it's something I definitely want to improve on. And I hope that by sharing these tips, it's something that can help you if you wanted to get into writing or are writing. I'm not an expert or anything like that in writing, but definitely, like I said, the gist of this podcast is always to do the same kind of actions or do repeated actions to go ahead and improve and get better at whatever it is that you're trying to improve and get better at. This is what we're encouraging on this podcast. Let's go ahead and get into it. An upcoming book takeaway will be Steven Pressfield's The War of Art. I was listening to an interview where the interviewee credited this book as being a big influence on their career. The key subject in the book is what Mr. Pressfield calls the resistance. The resistance prevents productivity. Procrastination goes hand in hand with the resistance. It can be a mental block. It can be making excuses to take action. It prohibits getting things done. I write the show notes / script for all the podcasts, which later become blog posts and video. When I began my daily practice late last year, I committed to writing 5 to 7 days a week. This coupled with journaling. The last 2 weeks I've thought, hey, if I'm journaling, that's as good as writing, right? Not really. I take journaling as vomiting my ideas, thoughts, feelings onto paper. Writing is more organized, more structured. I think so anyway. There is a connective thread I've found between James Altucher, Ryan Holiday, and Steven Pressfield. Besides Mr. Holiday and Mr. Pressfield being on Altucher's podcast, that thread being the best modern-day stories have similar elements to tales which have been told and shared for centuries. And if we don't instinctively get those specific story beats, we often don't feel that particular story, or we may think it may be lacking. Here are quotes from interviews done by James Altucher with first Ryan Holiday and then Steven Pressfield. Check these out.
So I love that there's that story about the fisherman in Thailand, and we think it's so smart and wise, but really the only reason we think it's profound and wise is because it's 800 years old or whatever.
Yeah. Well, the best stories kind of have resonated through time.
Mm-hmm.
Steven Pressfield talks about this too in kind of his least known book, The Authentic Swing.
Yes.
How basically he wrote The Legend of Bagger Vance, which is about a golf pro in the 1920s, and he basically says it's almost word for word the Bhagavad Gita written 2,500 years ago in India.
Mm-hmm.
But that's almost like you take these stories that are hundreds or thousands of years old, and it just goes to show you that civilization has focus grouped that story.
Yes.
To basically say, yes, this is a story that millions or billions of people will love. So if you can write something that's a mirror of that story in modern times, people will probably love that as well. And a great example is when the Fugees, the rap group, did the song Stayin' Alive from the Bee Gees. It was a big hit. Like, there's no way it could not be. But you could just take Stayin' Alive and put a reggae beat to it and then auto-tune your voice, and it's going to be a big hit.
Well, think about my books, right? I could have tried to come up with some comprehensive philosophy of the universe, and maybe I would have been right, and maybe it would have worked. Or what I did instead was someone introduced me to this 2,000-year-old philosophy called Stoicism, which millions of people and some of the most successful people in history have used. And I could say, I'm going to make this more accessible to a wider audience.
I think it is. In many ways, it's every story, if you think about it. It really is sort of the hero's journey, from Joseph Campbell or from C.G. Jung, where the hero starts out in the ordinary world, receives the call, enters the extraordinary world, and then it's all sort of duels against his own self-created sabotage, resistance, whatever it is, until the hero finally kind of returns home, having overcome, hopefully, or at least gained a perspective on what that internal enemy has been, whether it's the Odyssey, Odysseus doing that thing, or Luke Skywalker in Star Wars. That it's every story.
So-
The Jesus Christ story is that story. Luke receives the call, which comes at the end of Act 1 in any classic story, right? And usually a mentor, but he's afraid. Following the call is always the refusal of the call. I know you know this everything with James, but
No, but you know what though? It's not always so clear to me, because with every story there's tweaks. You have kind of like the framework, but then the artist
right
improvises
it gets
in the
expressed
framework.
in a certain way, but yet the framework almost never changes. The story of Odysseus, when they came to summon him to go to the Trojan War, he pretended he was plowing the field, and he pretended to sow salt in the field because he wanted to show he was crazy. That's like a refusal of the call. And then whoever it was that was sent for to bring him put his baby Telemachus in the path of the plow. And when Odysseus stopped the ox and didn't run over his little baby, he said, you're malingering her, and they drafted him for the Trojan War. But that's so the refusal of the call.
And so Luke refuses the call when Obi-Wan says, "You must go, come with me and train to be a Jedi Knight," and he says, "No, I have to stay."
Yeah, my aunt, right. And then it's what the Sand People killed his aunt and his uncle, right? So now he has to go. But usually it's the mentor that gives the young hero the inspiration and the courage to respond to the call. And then it's like Dorothy in the tornado, and she's gone from Kansas, right? And she's into the extraordinary world, or the inverted world.
Now that's the case, though. Wizard of Oz is an interesting one. She's passively brought into this alternative world, this special world, because the tornado picks her up. She didn't make it back. Somehow or other, the people in her family said, "Oh, we can't find Dorothy," so they shut the door and just let her survive in the tornado, and that takes her to the special world. As opposed to Luke, where his aunt and uncle are killed, he's got no other choice now. He decides to go with Obi-Wan.
But that, in a way, is an external event that he didn't cause. But in any event, what you were saying about somebody that's working a job, and I think maybe the call, quote unquote, is not necessarily to write a movie or a novel or to start a business, but it's a call to be who you really are, right? That may be finding love. It may be finding, marrying the person that you want to marry and having a family. It may, whatever it is, but we all sort of feel that like we were born into the wrong family. It's like we look around, my brother, my sister, what am I here with? That we're not yet who we are, right? Who we really are. And that's kind of the call. And then resistance is the equal and opposite force in reality that always resists that always puts into our minds, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I haven't got the guts, why me? Do I deserve it? Why should I write this book? It's been done 1,000 times already, better than all those excuses. And so the hero's journey is kind of a series of confronting those obstacles. But what's also interesting in the hero's journey is that there are allies that come to you in every story, right? Even Conan the Barbarian is like a classic, the original Arnold Schwarzenegger version, where he meets these sort of magical creatures and magical friends that help him. And that happens too. I'm sure it's happened in your life many, many times. You and I here today, in a way, are sort of magical friends for each other on some sort of journey. Which we might not be clear to us right now. But what brought you to come out here 3,000 miles, among with other things that you're doing?
These are both quotes from James Altucher's podcast, The James Altucher Show, which I will link to in the show notes for this particular episode. When I watch movies, TV, read comic books, I feel these old story tropes are tired. I want to write my own fictional stories or reinvent the wheel. But after hearing this, I see how important it is to hit these storytelling memes. I think this makes my job creating even easier. Someone recently asked me, what one word do I love? I said growth. Thinking back, I should have said create. Thank you so much for listening.